Welcome back to Podiatry Marketing. I'm one of your hosts, Jim McDannald. Tyson, how are things going today?
I am fantastic today, Jim. As I told you earlier on, had a late night. So I'm lucky we're doing this like mid-morning. We weren't doing this recording like at 6:30 in the morning when I do some of my other podcasts. No, I'm all chipper.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear because I think we've got some important stuff to share today with the audience. Do you want to talk a little bit about what we're going to talk to today?
Okay, so today's topic, and I did a webinar on this a long time ago to a podiatry group, and it was received really well and got a lot of questions from it afterwards. So the topic is, what I said, there's only 3 ways to actually market your podiatry business. People do go, oh, but you don't have the 6 pillars of marketing? Like, it was a bit confusing, which totally, when they said that, I went, yeah, okay, it is confusing. So I said, pretty much the first way is like paid advertising. The second way is partnerships. And the third way is content marketing. So pretty much there's tons of different ways of market within each of those 3, but they basically are the main ways to actually market your business.
Now that makes sense to me. I think, like you said, those are like fundamental principles, and there's definitely lots of new technologies, lots of tactics, lots of strategies that can be offshoots of those fundamentals. But those 3 are definitely things I talk about with clients and with podiatrists when I'm looking to find ways to raise awareness and to spread some information about what they're trying to do. So getting into paid advertising, how do you approach that aspect of these 3 kind of fundamentals?
So when people think of paid advertising, the most obvious thing that pops into their head is like Google ads, Facebook advertising, even LinkedIn, YouTube. And that's probably a lot of businesses doing it, and it obviously works. But even your old school stuff like newspaper, radio, magazines, anything that you're paying money to a company to get in front of their audience is pretty much paid advertising. And the problem with it is as soon as you stop, the audience stops. The newspaper or even Google is, wow, you've been advertising with us now for 2 years. Oh, you can't pay us this month? That's fine. We can still let our audience know that you're there when you want. If no, show me the money or get it. So that's the problem with it, is you don't own it. And when you look at, say, partnerships, it's like where you're teaming up with another business that may be in front of your patients. So, for example, for a podiatrist, there might be a physiotherapist that is treating the same sort of patients that you're treating. Got a lot of things in common. And you might say, hey, can I write an article for your newsletter? And they go, oh, that'd be fantastic. And you do the same thing to them. It's the same thing that you're borrowing their audience. And good part with partnerships, if you set it up right, you don't necessarily have to pay money to do it, but sometimes you may. Like when you're sponsoring an event, if there was a running event on it and you wanted to be one of the sponsors, you're pretty much paying money to be in front of their audience. But the following year when it comes around, if you said to them, hey, look, I sponsored you last year, can I just turn up, tell everyone I'm awesome? They're going to go, no, show me the money or basically get out. So paid and partnerships, both times you're just borrowing their audience. As long as you're paying money, they don't mind you sharing your message with them. But the third one, content marketing, which is everything that you do, that is the main thing because you own it.
Yeah, I think that's a huge important aspect of things is when you own that home base, whether it's the blog post you write or the content on your website that you can continue to refine and show to your audience. That's the SEO and the search engine traffic and all those things will grow over time. But it is a slower growth way of doing things. But like you said, it does pay dividends that you don't have if you're on these kind of more paid channels.
Yeah, and it's not that there's advantages and disadvantages for all 3. So the advantages for for 1 and 2, paid and partnerships, is if you've got a new service or you've got a new associate with you and you want a fast, quick result, it's a great way of doing it. You spend money, get in front of an audience. Hey, I've got this new service. I've got this new person. Bang, and everybody comes in. The disadvantage is it's expensive sometimes. Sometimes it's expensive depending on how you do it. But always look this way, if you're getting a good return on your investment, nothing is expensive. Yeah. If I say, Jim, hey, spend $1,000 here. Every time you spend $1,000, you're going to get 5,000 back. You'd be going, what if I spend $1 million? You get 5 million back. You'd be going, you wouldn't say no to that.
Yeah. I think it's trying to find that line, kind of like, where does that 5X stop, or where does that return on investment stop? But yeah, you're totally right.
Yeah. And like the advantages of the content marketing is, putting everything together yourself. Yeah. Like you own the audience but it's more of a long game. So one of the disadvantages would be it's a slower way of doing it. So if somebody said, I'm not going to do any paid advertising, purely just going to work on my website, work on my SEO, write articles, shoot my own videos, put them up there. Long term, they're probably going to benefit from that a lot, but it's slow. And that's why when you talk about the 3 ways of advertising, to me, it's good to be doing everything, not just paid, not just partnerships, and not just your own content.
No, I think you're totally right. Sometimes you just need to like lead in with some paid stuff to get some positive momentum going. Because if you have 10 people that visit your website every week, it's going to take you a really long time. Or if you have 5 email newsletter subscribers that week, it's good that you got 1 or 2 or 5, but you just got to find ways to put yourself out there, make people aware that the care you provide. And not that paid is going to mean automatic results, but at least you're putting yourself out there in a way that will help facilitate that kind of chasm between that fast momentum with paid and that kind of gradual build that you have more with the organic or with the kind of the SEO and the different types of content marketing, like you mentioned.
Yeah, but the thing is, you can have blogs, you can have frequently asked questions on your website. You can, like I said, you can shoot videos, but even audio, you could create your own podcast within a town, and every podcast that you create is content. You could run information webinars on particular topics. So if you're a podiatry clinic that focused a lot on runners, then you could say, hey, I'm doing a webinar. Yeah, you could do a monthly webinar series on different running problems and give advice there. And you might get a few people at the first one, but if they enjoy it, they'll be at the next one, but they'll tell some of their friends. But then you promote those webinars to different places where runners hang out. And then you could do, sometimes you can combine things. You might be doing the webinar, which you own, it's your content, but you bring in a guest that you might partner with who could be a physical therapist who has an expertise in a certain area. He comes on as the expert. Therefore, you're exposed to his audience because he tells everybody, but you're the one that did the webinar. You're the one that has the recording, which you can then put that on your website, put it on a YouTube channel, multiple things you can do with it.
I think that's a huge point. I think taking these opportunities where you do a webinar or you do something that you put time and effort into, finding multiple ways to repurpose that content, whether it's a replay, whether it's a mini course that you make, whether it's you pay someone on one of these kind of like outsourcing, like a Fiverr or someplace where they can turn those slides into a mini book or something where, providing different forms of that same content. Maybe the audio was even good enough from that webinar that it could be turned into something like a podcast. So there's no shortage of ways to like create valuable content. I think the problem becomes that people they see it as that webinar. I'm gonna do that one live webinar, and they did that thing, and then they move on to the next topic or to the next webinar. But honestly, once you do one of those things, you need to do either work with someone on your own team or work with someone outside of your team to make 5, 10 different pieces of information around that. So it can really, your time and effort was worth it on that one thing. And it wasn't just jumping from rock to rock, whether it's a partnership, whether it's in more content that was you already created the bones of it. It's just how you sometimes play with it and how you repurpose it can be hugely beneficial.
Oh, I think that wasn't a point I was really talking about, but that is perfect. It's all about repurposing, because someone will shoot like a video or like the webinar. They do the webinar and think, oh, that's basically it. But it's sitting down with, like you said, with your team or somebody else, your business coach, if you have one, and say, how can I use this information elsewhere? And how this can actually attract business. Give you a perfect example. Did a media release. We had done an extension on our podiatry clinic. So I contacted the paper. We brought in some new equipment, and I thought, oh, this is a good community story. We're expanding. Paper always likes good news stories. So they came out and they took a photo of my wife and I. And then they took a photo of my wife as well, because we had a shoe store attached to the clinic, and we revamped that. And there was a photo of my wife there, and she was holding this particular shoe. The media release ended up in the paper on the business section that week. So I contacted the paper and said, oh, can I get the e-version of the tear sheet? So it's an electronic version of what was in the paper that day. I then cropped out the photo and part of the article, and I chopped it up a little bit, and then I used it on social media, and I also put it on our website. When I put it in social media, the shoe that my wife was holding, the supplier of that shoe went, oh, and they shared it on their site to say that, hey, look what one of our suppliers is doing. Then a lady in country Victoria who follows that particular page saw the photo, rang our shoe shop in Cairns and said, that shoe that lady's holding in the ad, do you have that in a 7.5 black? And we went, as a matter of fact, we do. She paid it up for all over the phone and bang, we shipped it off. Now that was just me coming up with the idea, I want to do a media release. At the time I was doing it, at no stage I think I'm doing this media release because I'm going to sell a shoe to a lady in country Victoria who's from a small little town that I didn't even know had the internet. And even when that media release came out, I could have just gone, well, we had the media release in the paper. Isn't that awesome? It was there for a day and it's gone. But I squeezed it for as much juice I could get out of it. And we used it multiple times. And even when I was doing talks, I would refer, and in this media release, this is what we were talking about. So yeah, it's a good point. Just don't do things as one-off. Think, how else can I use it?
But I think you also bring up a good point there. It's not only just like, how can I like promote my businesses or my business or my services, but it's also, what are those like interesting ways to create win relationships, right? You didn't have to like have that shoe there, or you didn't have to like, maybe tag the name of that supplier or that shoe company within the post or wherever you put it at. But when you do those things, whether it's a mention or it's a tagging of a photo, that's maybe you have a partnership, maybe you're hanging out on the finish line or the medical tent with a physio and then another sports medicine professional, and you happen to tag them or write a little byline or description on social media or somewhere else. And there's that potential that gets in front of those people's audience as well, right? It's not in a very helpful and relevant way. It's not just a complete like shilling of your services in a really spammy way. It's not that way at all. Your association with others, and you're promoting these other people on your channels, and they're very likely to do the exact same thing for you in a very helpful, relevant way. So I think you bring up some good points there. And I think that's something that I don't know if people are just nervous about it, or they're just like so focused on what they're doing and their practice and their services. But the more you can find those like-minded individuals to create win relationships with, I think it has an exponential effect like on your practice in ways that may not seem totally, you don't know how it's going to work out, but a lot of times you'll be surprised by doing those things, like the results it can create.
Yeah, but there's been a lot of times where you might do something for somebody and you're not even really thinking, you're not doing it for any recognition, but then they give you some recognition for it and they tag you in a post, and also it makes you feel good. So I think when you're doing something, or if you've partnered up with somebody else, or you have the opportunity to thank somebody else for something that, and you're not doing purely just to go, hey, look, I'm thanking you, now do something back for me. But it's that whole, what goes around comes around, paying things forward. We were driving through Starbucks. I don't know if I told the story or not. And we're going to Starbucks, car in front paid for our coffee, my brother and I. And the lady said, you need to pay for this, car in front paid for it. My brother goes, why? Do we know them? I said, no, they just pay for it. He goes, well, why would they do that? And I was going, Tony, it's called paying it forward. He goes, what, am I supposed to pay for the pricks behind me because there's a ton of them in that car? I'm not paying their bill. And I tell him, no, you don't have to pay their bill. It's just something nice that somebody does. He's gone, never bloody heard of it. So anyway, I explained to him afterwards. He goes, oh, that's pretty cool. And it made me think, I was talking to my wife about it only 2 days ago. I said, imagine doing that same thing and you've got your business name, ABC Podiatry, on the back of your car. You go through the drive-through, you look at the car behind you, there's not 15 people in there. So you're thinking, okay, it should be okay. Actually, I was telling my daughter, and she said, what happens if the person's just a single person in a car, but they're doing the coffee order for the office? And I went, so I'm sure when you ask them, how much is their bill? And they go, it's $12. You can just pay that. If they say it's $122, you might go, oh, good for them. But I said, if you had ABC Podiatry in the back of your car, there's a car behind you, and you look at the car, you look at the person and go, that's my ideal client right behind me, just based on the car they're driving, how they look, how they're dressed, groomed. And you said to the person, oh, what's their coffee order behind me? I want to pay for it. And they said, oh, it's $10. And you pay for it. I reckon as you drove off, if you honked your horn and just waved, put your hand out the window and just waved as you drove off, they would look and go, why is that podiatry clinic waving at me? But when they get to the window and they don't have to pay, they'll remember that podiatry clinic paid for their coffee. To me, that is cheap advertising. That's it. And okay, that is, it's not creating content, but it is creating goodwill. And if you're going to get the coffee, and for $10, to have someone who is going to probably go to work or go back home and say, oh, the local podiatry clinic just paid for my coffee today, that's a win.
That's excellent word of mouth.
So yeah, to me, marketing is all about, regardless of which way you're doing, whether it's paid partnerships or content, it's really just thinking about who is your ideal client, what are they thinking, how can I connect with them, and what's the best mode of doing it. So Google Ads may be the best way at certain times. Partnerships may be the best way. But I think content long-term is really beneficial. And as long as you're creating content that is relevant to your ideal client, because I've seen people write blog articles on some rubbish that nobody cares about because they go, oh, I've got to write a blog article every week. Don't write crap. No one reads crap. No one wants it. Don't do it. But if your ideal client's wants to know more about ingrown toenails, bunion problems, then that's what you need to write about, and write it from so many different angles that when someone's typing something on the computer, go, are my bunions hereditary? Do I need to get surgery? Why is my bunion painful? Think of all the things that they're typing, and that's what you need to write about.
Yep, it's a great way to get that organic traffic and really build authority on
or shoot a video or create a podcast, the world's greatest bunion doctor. That would be a crazy show. So I think I've covered this area, or what I wanted to say in this, I think I've pretty well covered. I did have a couple of notes down here. And the last thing I was going to say was just, if you looked at, say, $2,000 and you put $2,000 into online advertising, you're going to get a certain response. When you stop, when the 2,000's used up, it's going to end. You put 2,000 into creating content, whether it's written, audio, video, there's a ton of content you can create for $2,000 that you could use for probably the next 2 years. So it is slow, but it can be very beneficial long-term. But I think it's all about finding that right balance for your particular business and for your audience.
That makes total sense to me. I think you're right. You have to find that what stage you are in your practice, what stage you are in your career, and you're never going to go wrong with content, but who's creating it and how much you can create and how relevant it is super important to
and if you can't write, get somebody else to write for you. If you don't want to be in front of a video camera because you reckon you look like a goose or you sound like a goose, then find another team member that will basically do it, or sit down and write the script and just get somebody in front of a camera just to share that information. Or if you don't like a camera at all, then just do audio. Get yourself a microphone. We did this, create an audiogram. You can have my wife, we did a lot of audiograms, and my wife not that she wasn't comfortable in front of a camera, but she didn't always want to do it because, how's my hair, how's my makeup? And so we started doing these audiograms where we'd just take a photo of a shoe, and we'd take that photograph, and my wife would then talk about it. We'd write a script, we recorded the thing. I'd just put them all together and create a small video of the shoe, and we could change the pictures and just have the audio over the top. So if you don't want to be in front of the camera, then create audiograms. It's a brilliant way of doing it.
Yeah, there's no wrong way to go about doing it. There's so many different options with the tools online and the internet. Just so many ways to share and create content these days.
So I'm going to sign off. Talk to you again this week. Okay,
that sounds great, Tyson. Bye.